start? Hello? Can we start? Hi. My name's Dr. John Carter. I'm a cultural anthropologist in the Department of Anthropology at Appalachian State. And I want to thank you all for coming. I know that this is the first evening after fall break, and I really appreciate you all being here for a really important speaker. And I'm just going to make a couple of comments, and then I'm going to pass off to Ryan Morgan, who's going to talk about his own solidarity work in Honduras and his connection to Neesa Medina, who is tonight's featured speaker. But in the beginning, let me just say a couple of things about being a student audience. I know a lot of you are here for extra credit. And what I want to say to you is that as responsible audience members, when the talk is over and we go to Q&A, you don't run out the door. You have to respect the speaker and stay through the Q&A, and especially if you're from my class, you have to stay through the Q&A. All right? I'm going to pick test questions from the Q&A just to troll those of you who leave early. Okay? So that's number one. Number two, again, I'm really glad you're here. That's not all of number two. Number two, I'm a sociocultural anthropologist, and I've been working in Honduras since 1997. And I'm really excited to introduce Neesa tonight because since 1997, I've spent most of my time in the capital city of Honduras, which is called Tegucigalpa. And for people who are in my classes on Mesoamerica or classes that have anything to do with Honduras, it's always really interesting to figure out who actually knows where Honduras is. It's not all of you. And who knows what the capital city of Honduras is. And so Neesa is going to be speaking tonight about the situation generally in the country around women's rights and around violence, around deportation. But she also comes from a tradition of protest in Tegucigalpa. And I feel very privileged to have her here tonight to speak to you because she is one of the leading feminist voices in the country. And I feel like in a couple of years from now, you remember hearing about her as her name sort of elevates around the world. Neesa Medina is trained in sociology at the National Autonomous University in Tegucigalpa. She works for the Center for Women's Rights in Honduras, which is a very complicated job, and I think she'll be talking about it a bit tonight. And before I pass off to Neesa, I want to let Ryan Morgan talk, because he works for a group called Witness for Peace, which has a southeastern branch which is based in Raleigh, North Carolina. And when I was an undergraduate, Witness for Peace was a really critical part of radicalizing me as an activist, but also as a scholar. And when I say that I've spent the last 20 years working in Honduras, I've worked in Tegucigalpa primarily around the issue of juvenile delinquency, narco-trafficking, the illicit economy, and so on. But I was first introduced to all of those issues by a person who worked for Witness for Peace and took me to Honduras and began to kind of open up my mind to the traditions of struggle across the 20th century, across the modern political period. And so I think of it being very interesting and fulfilling for me to see both Ryan and Neesa here tonight, because Ryan's going to be able to talk to you about what he does. And I think, you know, when you ask yourself what you do after graduation, a lot of you think about going kind of vertically into hierarchical institutions and how you advance through those institutions to make money and to establish your own kind of financial well-being. But another way of thinking about graduating is to move horizontally into the world, or horizontally into communities through solidarity work and through work that's in non-governmental places or non-profit places. And so without further ado, I'll pass off to Ryan, and I just wanted to give him a warm welcome, and then we'll give another warm welcome for Neesa when she comes up after Ryan.
Thank you all very much. It's really a privilege to be here. It's exciting to see so many of you here. I understand that I'm not the point of this, so I'm going to be as quick as I can, so we can get on to Neesa. But I work for Witness for Peace, which is a grassroots solidarity NGO based in the United States, but working in Latin America. Right now, we have program sites in 4 countries, which are Mexico, Colombia, Cuba, and Honduras. I form part of the team that's permanently in Honduras. The mission of Witness for Peace well, we were founded in 1983 as part of the Contra War in Nicaragua, as a response to the Contra War in Nicaragua. We understand that people in the U.S., for people in the U.S., the effects of American policy in other parts of the world, in our case in Latin America, are pretty obscure. And people generally tend to be either uninformed or misinformed about what the effects of those policies really look like to people on the ground. The objective of Witness for Peace is to actualize the struggles of people who are affected by U.S. policy in the countries where we work. And there's a few different ways that we do that. I think maybe at the end I can talk a little bit more about some of them and some of the campaigns we're working on now. But for the moment I'll say that one of the things we do, for example, is take delegations of U.S. citizens, and it doesn't have to be citizens, but delegations of people who live in the U.S. to the countries where we work to meet the partners that we work with on the ground. And these are people and communities that are struggling daily against the effects of U.S. policy in these countries. I have laid out on the table some advertisements for delegations coming up in Colombia, Cuba, and Honduras next year. If you're put off by the price, that should not be the reason you don't go. We have scholarship money available, I'm saying. So if the only reason you don't want to go on a delegation with us is because you think you can't afford it, you can go, and we'll figure it out, especially for students. But another model of, because we recognize these barriers to access for our delegations, another way that we actualize, I'm using that word twice, but actualize our mission is by coming on speakers tours of the U.S., which is what Neesa and I are doing here now, so that our partners from all 4 country sites so that you can hear directly from them about what the situation is in those countries and the way that U.S. policy informs it. We've noticed particularly that certainly since Donald Trump was inaugurated, there are a lot of people here who are eager to show solidarity with migrant communities here, but who persist on being misinformed about why they're here. And this is one of the things we're hoping to address. So I may talk a little bit later once we get to the Q&A about some of the specific campaigns we're working on and ways that you can help us with that. But for now, I'll turn it over to Neesa.
Hi everyone. So for you who are here for the extra credit, I will make it interesting, so don't suffer that much. I'm Neesa Medina. I'm 30 years old, and I'm from Tegucigalpa, Honduras. Born and raised there. And I work for the Center for Women's Rights, which is a feminist NGO that I am proudly being part of for the last 8 years, although the institution has been around for more than 25. CDM, is the acronym, is it? In Spanish, CDM, has 2 teams of work. We have an educational team that is meant to strengthen the social movement. So we work with organized women, or students, farmers, part of unions, women who are organized part of the social movement, and we go with them in a process, a educational process of no less than 8 months now. Because it's not through 20-minute speeches that we can achieve change, really. And especially when you come from a feminist line of work, we understand that in order to achieve this change in each and every one of the participants, you have to deconstruct first our bodies and recognize them as the first territory to conquer, really. So we start there and move on to the other social structures that determine who we are, what we think, what we eat, where do we go. The other team in CDM is the Advocacy and Communications team. The Advocacy and Communications consists in an observatory of violence against women, but also an observatory that works and tries to link the information. Well, we do a lot of research and investigation, and we manage to present this investigation and research information in reports to the UN or the UN committees or audiences in international human rights organizations. Part of it is how we echo our information and our requests through the partnership that we have with several organizations internationally. Witness for Peace is one of them. But we also try to do, to spread the word around. Right? We get the power of social media, so if you speak Spanish, some of you, you can follow us. It's CDM Honduras. Or we do post once in a while in English. CDM started working on gender-based violence. That was our first issue to address back in 1992, when domestic violence was not considered an issue that needed to. It was supposed to be a topic that it should be addressed within the couple. There was no figure that you can say, "Oh, this happened to me. I need the intervention of the police or the judiciary system." No, it was something that you had to deal on your own. So in 1982, we started working in order to get a law that recognized that domestic violence was not part of a relationship, and that was it. Since then, we work with labor rights. Women in these textile factories called maquilas. There are mostly in the northern region of the country, and mostly employee women, pretty young. We work with sexual and reproductive rights. Honduras is one of the 6 countries in the world where abortion, any form of abortion, is criminalized. So if you undergo this unsafe procedure, because it's illegal, so if you go and have an abortion, even if it's because you were raped and are pregnant because of a rape, or you're trying to save your life and undergo to this unsafe abortion, you could face up to 8 years in jail. Only 6 countries in the world criminalize abortion totally. Honduras is one of them. We also, there's a restriction that makes Plan B, the emergency contraception, illegal. Even for rape victims. Even if you go and report a rape, this pill that should be part of the rape kit has been removed. Because after the coup in 2009, a Ministry of Health thought that his personal beliefs should be imposed on everyone, regardless of the science evidence that said the emergency contraception is contraception, not abortion. So we have been not able to get this reversed. It has been 8 years since then. So for 8 years, everyone who has had the need to an emergency contraception, the state, the government has failed to them each and every time. And this is especially problematic in a country where there's so much gender-based violence. Rape, for example, since we are on this topic, every 3 hours, a rape is reported in Honduras. Every 3 hours. But only 1 out of every 6 victims go through the obstacles and get reported. So every 30 minutes, a woman is being raped in Honduras. Every 16 hours, a woman is killed in Honduras. And to make it worse, what's the reaction that we have from our government? Well-spread impunity. in the majority of the cases, in femicides, 90% of the crimes remain impune. And when it comes to sexual abuse, 98% remain in impunity. This is not only bad, horrific for the ones who got to suffer and go through all of this, but also the message that impunity sends is that you can get away with it. So when you live in a country where 9 out of every 10 femicides happen without repercussions, and you're thinking about killing a woman, the odds are that you can get away with it. So people do. The fact is that violence, murder, it's the everyday in Honduras. And violence is not only this notion of being physically harmed. Violence is not only the murder rate. Maybe some of you know, a couple of years ago, in 2012, 13, 14, there was this report of the Global Peace Index, and they presented this ranking of countries based on the murder rate. So, based on taking only that into consideration, Honduras held the first position as the most violent country in the world for 3 years in a row. 2014, we had that year a murder rate of closely 90 per 100,000 people. And if you ask anyone in Honduras, they know what the murder rate is. Maybe not the exact number, but when you live in a country where violence is measured only by a murder rate, and this information goes around in the news cycle, it's announced to you like it's the stock market. Oh, so this year we ended up with a murder rate 10 points lower than last year. And this year we're going 5 points up. And next year, 7 points down. It's all like stock market auction. That's how we measure violence. Did any of you know what the murder rate was in the US in 2014? The North Carolina murder rate in 2014. It's different, isn't it, to have that piece of information constantly there on you. So in that time where we held this first place, being the most violent country in the world, the reaction of some of the other governments that fund security programs, they started to say like, we have supported these governments, Honduras governments, for many years, and the situation has only getting worse. We need to see some results. But when you only take into consideration numbers, you're asked to have results based on numbers, and you're the one controlling those numbers, you change the numbers. You don't change the violence. You don't need to. You only change the numbers. So in 2014, in June, there was this Ministry of Security who the first thing he decided was that the police was not authorized to give statistics about murders since that moment until the end of the year. So for 6 months, we did not have any statistics whatsoever on homicides in Honduras. Coincidentally, this was 2015. Coincidentally, at the end of the year, we were 10 points lower on the murder rate. Total coincidence. Total coincidence, right? Of course not. We, as Center for Women's Rights, we decided to have a little investigation. We do in this Observatory of Women's Rights, we recollect information from the media on femicides. So we have this list of information that was out there in the media: name, address, date of the murder, city, other information. So we compared this information with the one that was available in the police website. And we discovered that 17% of the cases that the media reported, most of them with photos and interviews of the family, were not included in the official data of murders. They appear under other categories of violent death, but not homicides. They were accidental deaths or undetermined deaths. So exactly the same amount of people were killed, but you don't categorize them in homicide. That's how you lower a murder rate without lowering actual murders. And what this manipulation does is that people forget that violence is more than homicide, because we get this notion that it's only homicide, the homicide rate, the homicide rate, the homicide rate. So they don't care about domestic violence, sexual crimes, sexual harassment, torture. They don't care, they don't know. But we refuse to get in that, reduction, like that notion that violence is only murder. We know that it's so much more than that. You know what violence looks like? That's violence. You don't need to get a wound on you to be victim of violence. When you are constantly worrying every day, that's violence. When the message that you get is that you are the one who is supposed to be held responsible for your own safety, that's violence. When you as a mother are responsible not only for your safety but your loved ones, that's how you go around every day. And don't get me wrong, women in Honduras are extremely brave.